Hello, everyone. Today we're going to read chapter number 8 from Born a Crime. This chapter's name is Robert. My father is a complete mystery. There are so many questions about his life that I still cannot even begin to answer. Where did he grow up? Somewhere in Switzerland. Where did he go to university? I don't know if he had. How did he end up in South Africa? I haven't got a clue. I've never met my Swiss grandparents. I don't know their names or anything about them. I do know my dad has an older sister, but I've never met her. I know that he worked as a chef in Montreal and New York for a while before moving to South Africa in the late 70s. I know that he worked for an industrial food service company and that he opened a couple of bars and restaurants here and there. That's about it. I never called my dad dad. I never addressed him as daddy or father either. I couldn't. I was instructed not to. If we were out in public or anywhere people might overhear us and I call him dad, someone might have asked questions or called the police. So for as long as I can remember, I always call him Robert. Well, I know nothing of my dad's life before me, thanks to my mom, and just for this time, and just from the time I have been able to spend with him, I do have a sense of who he is as a person. He is very Swiss, clean and particular and precise. He's the only person I know who checks into a hotel room and leaves it cleaner than when he arrived. He doesn't like anyone waiting on him. No servants, no housekeepers. He cleans up after himself. He likes his space. He lives in his own world, and does his own everything. I know that he never married. He used to say that most people marry because they want to control another person, and he never wanted to be controlled. I know that he loves traveling, loves entertaining, having people over, but at the same time, his privacy is everything to him. Wherever he lives, he's never listed in the phone book. I'm sure my parents would have been caught in their times together if he hadn't been as private as he is. My mom was wild and impulsive. My father was reserved and rational. She was fire, he was ice. They were opposites that attracted, and I am a mix of them both. One thing I do know about my dad is that he hates racism and homogeneity more than anything, and not because of any feelings of self righteousness or moral superiority. He just never understood how wild people could be racist in South Africa. Africa is full of black people, he would say. So why would you come all the way to Africa if you hate black people? If you hate black people so much, why did you move into their house? To him, it was insane. Because racism never made sense to my father, he never subscribed to any of the rules of apartheid. In the early 80s, before I was born, he opened one of the first integrated restaurants in Johannesburg, a steakhouse. He applied for a special license that allowed business to serve both black and white patrons. These licenses existed because hotels and restaurants needed them to serve black travelers and diplomats from other countries, who in theory weren't subject to the same restrictions as black South Africans. Black South Africans with money, in turn, exploited that loophole to frequent those hotels and restaurants. My dad's restaurant was an instant booming success. Black people came because there were few upscale establishments where they could eat, and they wanted to come and sit in a nice restaurant and see what it was like. White people came because they wanted to see what it was like to sit with black people. The white people would sit and watch the black people eat, and the black people would sit and eat and watch the white people watching them eat. The curiosity of being together overwhelmed the animosity keeping people apart. The place had a great vibe. The restaurant closed only because a few people in the neighborhood took it upon themselves to complain. They filed petitions, and the government started looking for ways to shut my dad down. At first, the inspectors came and tried to get him on cleanliness and health code violations. Clearly, they had never heard of the Swiss. That failed dismally. Then they decided to go after him by imposing additional and arbitrary restrictions. Since you've got the license, you can keep the restaurant open, they said. But you'll need to have separate toilets for every racial category. You'll need white toilets, black toilets, colored toilets, and Indian toilets. But then it will be a whole restaurant of nothing but toilets. Well, if you don't want to do that, your other option is to make a normal restaurant and only serve whites. He closed the restaurant. After apartheid fell, my father moved from Hillbrow to Yellowville, a formerly quiet residential neighborhood that had transformed into this vibrant melting pot of black and white and every other hue. Immigrants were pouring in from Nigeria and Ghana and all over the continent, bringing different food and exciting music. Rocky Street was the main strip, and its sidewalks were filled with street vendors and restaurants and bars. It was an explosion of culture. My dad lived 2 blocks from Rocky on U Street, right next to this incredible park where I love to go because kids of all races and different countries were running around and playing there. My dad's house was simple, nice but nothing fancy. I feel like my dad had enough money to be comfortable and travel, but he never spent lavishly on things. He was extremely frugal, the kind of guy who drives the same car for 20 years. My father and I lived on a schedule. I visited him every Sunday afternoon. Even though apartheid had ended, my mom had made her decision. She didn't want to get married, so we had our house and he had his. I made a deal with my mom that if I went with her to mixed church and white church in the morning, after that I'd get to skip black church and go to my dad's, where we'd watch Formula One instead of casting out demons. I celebrated my birthday with my dad every year, and we spent Christmas with him as well. I loved Christmas with my dad because my dad celebrated European Christmas. European Christmas was the best Christmas ever. My dad went all out. He had Christmas lights and a Christmas tree. He had fake snow and snow globes and, and stockings hung by the fireplace and lots of red presents from Santa Claus. African Christmas was a lot more practical. We'd go to church, come home, have a nice meal with good meat, and lots of custard and jelly. But there was no tree. You'd get you'd get a present, but it was usually just clothes, a new outfit. You might get a toy, but it wasn't wrapped and it was never from Santa Claus. The whole issue of Santa Claus is a rather contentious one when it comes to African Christmas, a matter of pride. When an African dad buys his kid a present, the last thing he's going to do is give some fat white man credit for it. African dad will tell you straight up, no, 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 no. I bought you that. Outside of birthdays and special occasions, all we had was our Sunday afternoons. He would cook for me. He'd ask me what I wanted, and I always request the same meal, a German dish called Rosti, which is basically a pancake made of potatoes and some sort of meat with a gravy. I'd have that and a bottle of Sprite, and for dessert, a plastic container of custard with caramel on top. A good chunk of those afternoons would pass in silence. My dad didn't talk that much. He was caring and devoted, attentive to detail. Always a card on my birthday, always my favorite food and toys when it came for a visit. But at the same time, he was a closed book. We'd never talk about the food he was making, talk about the Formula One racing we'd watched. Every now and then, he'd drop a tidbit of information about a place he'd visited or his steakhouse. But that was it. Being with my dad was more like watching a web series. I get a few minutes of information, a few minutes at a time. Then I have to wait a week for the next installment. When I was 13, my dad moved to Cape Town and we lost touch. We'd been losing touch for a while, for a couple of reasons. I was a teenager. I had a whole other world I was dealing with now. Video games and computers meant more to me than spending time with my parents. Let's stop here. This is a sad reality. Maybe I include myself on this, and maybe we all can relate to this. That technology sometimes is ripping apart the relationships between us and our parents. Sometimes we don't notice this, but it happens. Every time we prefer to play video games before going out with our parents or family of people or people we love, we are breaking a little part of that relationship. And that is bad. And it will hurt in some time. Maybe not now, maybe not in a week, maybe not in a month, but in some time that will shock you, that will hurt you, and you'll think that you wasted your entire life. It's okay to play video games. Just give your parents a minute, give your parents a day, a week. Just stay with them as much as you can. Stay with the people you love as much as you can. Video games can last forever. Your parents won't. So enjoy them. We can see that Robert, Trevor's dad, seems like a good guy. I'm not going to lie. The only reason why he was separated from Trevor was because of appetite, mainly. He wasn't able to be like the main character in his life during his early childhood. He was like, he was his dad. Trevor seen him as his dad, saw him as his dad. Yet his mother told him not to call him dad. So maybe that generated an image of Robert as some kind of a friend to Trevor. And as he was too little to understand the situation, let's remember that time when he followed his dad, calling him daddy, 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 why are you running away from me? And in a public place where everybody was watching, and he was just sprinting out of the place so nobody could see him. He was too little to understand the situation. Now he understands it. But maybe when he was little, he didn't get the idea of his dad as this person that we're about to know more. But the person that we just met, it would have been a great dad if it was like the main character for Trevor in his early childhood. Let's continue. I was a teenager. I had a whole other world I was dealing with now. Video games and computers meant more than to me than spending time with my parents. Also, my mom had married Abel. He was incensed by the idea of my mom being in contact with her previous love, and she decided it was safer for everyone involved not to test his anger. I went from seeing my dad every Sunday to seeing him every other Sunday, maybe once a month. Whenever my mom could sneak me over, same as she'd done back in Hillbrow, we'd gone from living under apartheid to living under another kind of tyranny, that of an abusive alcoholic man. At the same time, Yeovil had started to suffer from white flight, neglect, general decline. Most of my dad's German friends had left for Cape Town. If he wasn't seeing me, he had no reason to stay, so he left. His leaving wasn't anything traumatic because it never registered that we might lose touch and never see each other again. In my mind, it was just dad moving to Cape Town for a bit, whatever. Then he was gone. I stayed busy living my life, surviving high school, surviving my early 20s, becoming a comedian. My career took off quickly. I got a radio DJ gig and hosted a kids' adventure reality show on television. I was headlining at clubs all over the country. But even as my life was moving forward, the questions about my dad were always there in the back of my mind, bubbling up to the surface now and then. I wonder where he is. Does he think about me? Does he know what am I doing? Is he proud of me? When a parent is absent, you're left in the lurch of not knowing, and it's so easy to fill that space with negative thoughts. They don't care. They're selfish. Let's stop here again. Human beings need support from any other human beings, especially if they're influential people in their lives. It can be their friends, their parents, or any other person they admire. Because every time we see people supporting us and giving us these words that fill us in of happiness, that's our motivation to continue. But when that words aren't there, instead of just thinking that maybe they aren't there because our parents aren't there at that time, some people might think that the reason they're not there it's because we are a weight on their lives. We are like a rock, a big ass rock. Like we might disappoint them, but that's not true. But that's what we think every time our parents are busy or are in the office or just tell us they can't go with us to see our soccer match or basketball match. Maybe we think they're disappointed, they don't want to see us. Yet that's not the case. And we must talk to them. We need to go further into the reasoning and try to get the answer of all these questions and find the way of knowing the truth, of knowing that we are the number one fan of our own lives. Okay? The other people's support is really important, but the best piece of advice that you could get is the one given by yourself. Just imagine yourself as another person, but still you, just like another person's perspective, and give a comment, give give advice to that person. That's still you. Take note of that. That piece of advice is the one that will make you successful in the thing you're doing. My one saving grace was that my mom never spoke ill of him. She will always compliment him. You're good with your money. You'll get that from your dad. You have your dad's smile. You're clean and tidy like your father. I never turned to bitterness because she made sure I knew his absence was because of circumstances and not lack of love. This part is also really important, guys. Normally, when parents, generally, are mad to each other and they start an argument and you are present at that moment, that feels really sad for you, okay? I think that most of you have experienced this, but the things that hurt the most are that times or that moments in which your mom talks bullshit about your dad, talks bad about him. Oh my god, I hate your dad. He's always this stupid to me. Haven't you noticed? Parents must not talk about this stuff to children, especially their children. Generated a bad image of their parents, of their dad, of their mom will affect them. Okay? She always told me the story of her coming home from the hospital and my dad saying, "Where's my kid? I want that kid in my life." She'd said to me, "Don't ever forget he chose you." And ultimately, when I turned 24, it was my mom who made me track him down. Because my father is so private, finding him was hard work. We didn't have an address. He wasn't in the phone book. I started by reaching out to some of his old connections. German expats in Johannesburg, a woman who used to date one of his friends who knew somebody who knew the past place where he stayed. I got nowhere. Finally, my mom suggested the Swiss embassy. They have to know where he is, she said, because he has to be in touch with them. I wrote to the Swiss embassy asking them where my father was, but because my father is not in my birth certificate, I had no proof that my father is my father. The embassy wrote back and said they couldn't give any information because they didn't know who I was. I tried calling them, and I got the runaround there as well. "Look, kid," they said, "we can't help you. We are the Swiss embassy. Do you know nothing about the Swiss? Discretion is kind of our thing, and that's what we do." Tough luck. I kept pestering them, and finally they said, "Okay, we'll take your letter, and if a man such as you're describing exists, we might forward your letter to him. If he doesn't, maybe we won't. Let's see what happens." A few months later, a letter came back in the post. "Great to hear from you. How are you? Love, Dad." He gave me his address in Cape Town, in a neighborhood called Camps Bay, and a few months later, I went down to visit. I'll never forget the day. It was probably one of the weirdest days of my life, going to meet a person I knew and yet did not know at all. My memories of him felt just out of reach. I was trying to remember how he spoke, how he laughed, what his manner was. I parked on his street and started looking for his address. Camps Bay is full of older, semi retired white people, and as I walked down the road of these old white men were all walking around toward me and past me. My father was pushing 70 by that point, and I was so afraid I'd forgotten what he looked like. I was looking in the face of every old white man who passed me. Like, "Are you my daddy?" Basically, it looked like I was cruising old white dudes in a beachfront retirement community. Then, finally, I got the address I'd been given and rang the bell. At the second he opened the door, I recognized him. "Hey, it's you," I thought. "Of course it's you. You're the guy. I know you." We picked up right where we left off, which was him treating me exactly the way he treated me as a 13-year-old boy, like the creature of habit he was. My father went straight back into it. "Right. So, where were we? Here, I got all your favorites: potato hostie, a bottle of Sprite, custard with caramel." Luckily, my tasters hadn't matured much since the age of 13, so I tucked her right in. While I was eating, he got up and went and picked up his book, an oversized photo album, and brought it back to the table. "I've been following you," he said, and he opened it up. It was a scrapbook of everything I had ever done, Every time my name was mentioned in a newspaper, everything from magazine covers to the tiniest club listings, from the beginning of my career all the way through the week, he was smiling so big as he took me through it, looking at the headlines. Trevor Noah appearing this Saturday at the Blues Room. Trevor Noah hosting new TV show. I felt a flood of emotions rushing through me. It was everything I could do not start crying. It felt like this 10-year gap in my life closed right up in an instant, like only a day had passed since I last seen him. For years, I had had so many questions. Is he thinking about me? Does he know what am I doing? Is he proud of me? See this. Maybe Trevor think, thought that his dad didn't want to see him. His mom tried to like tell Trevor that this wasn't the case, that it was because of odd circumstances that his dad couldn't be there all the time, and maybe never. Yet we can see that his dad was his number one fan every time. He was always focused on him. He was always looking where his name was on the newspapers. And damn, what a nice guy. What a nice father. He was such a good father even when he wasn't there. Okay? But he'd been with me the whole time. He'd always been proud of me. Circumstance had pulled us apart, but he was never not my father. He was ever his father. Ever his father. I walked out of his house that day an inch taller. Seeing him had reaffirmed his choosing of me. He chose to have me in his life. He chose to enter my letter. I was wanted. Being chosen is the greatest gift you can give to another human being. Once we reconnected, I was overcome by the drive to make up for all the years we'd missed. I decided the best way to do it was to interview him. I realized very quickly that that was a mistake. Interviews will give you facts and information, but facts and information weren't really what I was after. What I wanted was a relationship, and an interview is not a relationship. Relationships are built in the silences. You spend time with people, you observe them and interact with them, and you come to know them. That is what apartheid stole from us. Time. You can make up for that in an interview, but I had to figure it out myself. I went out to spend a few days with my father, and I made it my mission. This weekend, I will get to know my father. As soon as I arrived, I started prepping him with questions. Where are you from? Where did you go to school? Why do you do this? How do you do that? He started getting visibly irritated. What is this? He said. Why are you interrogating me? What's going on here? Uh, I want to get to know you. Is this how you normally get to know people? I interrogate them? Well, not really. So, how do you get to know people? I don't know, by spending time with them, I guess. Okay, so spend time with me. See what you find out. So, we spent the weekend together. He had dinner and talked about politics. We watched Formula One racing and I talked about sports. We sat quietly in his backyard and listened to old Elvis Presley records. The whole time he said not one word about himself. Then, as I was packing up to leave, he walked over to me and sat down. So, he said, in the time we'd spent together, what would you say you learned about your dad? Nothing. All I know is that you are extremely secretive. You see, you're getting to know me already. That's the end of chapter 8 of Born a Crime. That is also the end of part 1 of this book. We'll continue on the other chapters next time. In this chapter, we saw Robert. He is a nice dad, he's a nice person. He prefers to save his personal stuff to himself. Yet, people that don't want to share their personal information are not people that just kind of want to be mischievous or mysterious. They're not that kind of people. But it doesn't matter. You get to know people by being in a relationship with them. And you don't have to know everything about them before starting to form a relationship. And maybe, just maybe, if you get a footstep ahead, or in another way, if maybe one day you can have enough trust, loyalty, the confidence of that people, of that person in particular, they will tell you something about them. They will open up to you. The key to that is being loyal, is being trustworthy every time. Don't worry, it will always be fine if you try. Just be yourself. And don't forget, read every day, every week, every month, every life. Have a nice day.